All right, welcome back to today's video trade journal. So today was a pretty good day. Basically had almost like a 2 hour on both funded accounts. So we made roughly $950 on the funded. So on the YM trades I take on YM. No, this is the my funded futures. This is YM. So this is my Lucid account. As you can see, we made $490 on this one, putting us at $670, which also means we need just 2 more winning days to finally get the first payout. And then on my funded futures account, we finally had a winning day after some rough fighting. So we're still down on this one, $474, but technically this is also just one more winning trade to get it to break even. So on this one, after commissions and everything, it wasn't like complete full R, 2 hours, so 480 would be 2 hour. So a bit shy of that, but these $70 I don't really mind. So we had an overall pretty good day. So let's just jump into the trade recap itself. I think the most important today is actually the fundamentals. So for anyone who didn't know, I mean, I also was in a point of my trading career where I did not know. Yesterday after close, we had Nvidia earnings, which was obviously in everyone's focus, especially for the large companies. And if you just Google like Nvidia earnings report and you saw the news, which it was a bit off or odd, because technically they beat the expectations, they beat what Wall Street Analytics had in mind, and yet still the market was selling off. It was just mostly due to the uncertainty of AI, if this is just one crazy overspending and just if the bubble is bursting or not. So there was a very fundamental sign for me that the market doesn't want to rally today, which was strictly just because Nvidia, even though it had positive earnings, was showing weakness. And then we even had unemployment claims today for Red Folder News at 2:30, but this pretty much just got completely overlooked. Nobody cared about this today. The only thing everybody cared about was the Nvidia earnings. So that was also what I was focusing on most. For levels today, what I had on my chart before the market opened was we had the previous day high. Wait, let me just grab it like this. This was actually not previous day high, so obviously this was previous day high. This was the high we had on Monday, which also tapped into previous week's high. So for me, this was a bit more of importance than just yesterday's small previous day high. So this was the first level I had to the upside, and then to the downside, the previous day low aligned with previous week's low. So this was very of much importance to me. So the previous week low was over here on Friday, and then obviously this is the previous day low. So this was the level to the downside, and maybe I haven't touched on this, but it's like a new style of trading that I'm trying out. It's like this box trading where my trade idea is always based off a higher time frame level like this. Some would also call it just support and resistance, supply and demand. In my opinion, it's all just lingo. We all talk about the same thing in different languages, but basically we kind of all trade the same things. And then so this was to the downside. And then also what was very interesting to me was this immediate rebalance level. So if you go to the daily time frame, this is something I don't really use on like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. It's not of much importance to me, but if you check this 3 candle formation, we saw that depending on how today's candle closes, we maybe have a fair value gap or not, or we have the immediate rebalance where we immediately fill all of this price action from yesterday to the top of this wick. And that was pretty much the move that I was anticipating today or coming into this session. So if we go to the 1 hour again, obviously we had previous day closed. This was also of interest to me. And then let's just jump into this session and go into replay modes and see how I took this trade. So market opens, we pushed really heavy. So as you can see, also during the whole overnight session, we were just rallying all the time on YM. Excuse me if I haven't said this. So this is first the YM trade. So the first 5-minute candle pushed into previous day high, but ultimately didn't really show for me any sign of like going even long or taking the long into like prior all-time highs or previous week high, because after we had this push, so this candle for me was kind of like maybe we have a reversal on our hands at this point in time. The rest of the market was also already selling off pretty hard, so ES and NQ were already selling off, and having this doji candle closing right above previous day high, I was like, okay, we really need, for me to take a trade, we really need to get some pullback and then like come above like the 5-minute opening range again, and then taking it long. So for me, what would have happened is retest deeper into this, coming up, then technically a retest again on the high of this candle to play it long, because I didn't believe after everything that happened this week that we would just like rally up all the time like crazy. But then finally we had the sell-off happening. So at this point in time, we were already back within the 5-minute opening range, but we also had, which is something that I really like to trade, is the 5-minute opening range was the same as the 15-minute opening range. I try not to switch between the two too often. I think it's better if you strictly trade one. So I try to use only the 5-minute, but today this aligned. So obviously for me, this level was very much important. Which was this level? This was the 49,662. So I was very much looking at this one, anticipating or seeing how price will react to this. So at that point, I was like, okay, maybe we can play this super aggressively. In hindsight, you could also just be a bit more patient and save you a lot of stress and trouble. But after I saw like this crazy V-shaped recovery or like pullback, whatever you want to call it, I was like, I don't think we will come above previous day high again and then push to the upside, because the rest of the market was just going to the downside. I was like, okay, let me see if I can just like get a very basic continuation trade in. And I think on the 45-minute candle was where I already entered. Yep. So on the next candle, I was like, if we can put in a new low already in here, I'm very much interested in this trade, because if this next candle breaks the low, so which is like the 5-minute and 15-minute opening low, I think we will just continue strongly to the downside. So basically this is kind of what not really happened, but happened. So I got into the trade here, and I always use a 80-point stop loss when I trade 6 minis on YM. This was also a good stop loss, because on the next 5-minute candle, it's easier to see. Maybe let's highlight it like this. So this also left a fair value gap. So I was like, I have a pretty decent stop loss size. This 5-minute fair value gap is protecting my stop. If we come above this, then I'm not interested in shorts anymore. And yeah, so as long as we just have these doji candles, I think everything is fine. And then this trade took actually quite some time. So you will see we actually got a retest of previous day's high. So you can see we closed below, came back up, then we sold off, and this is where I said I could have saved myself a lot of time in the trade, because obviously it just like pushes adrenaline and rush and everything. So I could just have waited for something more clean like this. So after the retest of previous high, setting off here, we get the first close below the 5-minute opening range, and then we had somewhat like a retest, and then we were selling off. I believe the proper one is here. Yeah. So here we got a very nice close to the downside. So technically you could have also got in on this candle. Also like 80-point stop loss would have put you above all this. So this would have been previous day high. So it was pretty much the same trade. I mean, the difference in points was maybe like 30 points. So 30 points you could have just like given to the market, and I could have saved myself, I don't know, like 14-15 minutes of being in a trade as a scalper. This feels like an eternity. So at this point, my adrenaline, I was pretty much burned out from this trade, because I don't stay in trades this long. So it was something new for me. So when the market then finally moved to the downside, we retested weekly open for a little bit. We retested once again the 5-minute opening range, and then we finally got the sell-off. And here I got out. I wanted to get out at the psychological level of 500, which technically, once again, is not the full target I had in mind. As I said, the daily immediate rebalance was what I was most interested in. But long story short, I already closed the NQ trade. I had to walk away from the charts to be a bit with the family. And when I got back to the charts, I think I was literally at this candle, and at that point had no top wick. And we started to form a bottom wick. I had my daughter, she was going full bonkers. And to be honest, it was a bit stressful and everything. So I was just manually closing out the trade, because I was like, yeah, I have no clue what's happening right now. I still think I saw this level. I was like, I don't want to have this bounce and like come all the way back up. So I was like, let me just grab my 2-hour trade and be done with it. But obviously it just took 2 more 5 minutes candles at this point. I mean, maybe even less. I don't know when it hit this, but so yeah, I got out at the 15 candle, and literally 6 minutes later, the trade would have doubled, which is something unfortunate. I'm still working on. I see it in my trade journal that pretty much every good trade that I have is actually running longer than I can hold it, which is less ideal. But one day we hopefully get to the point where we can just hold trades longer. Yeah, if I would just have targeted this, it would have been an amazing trade. I mean, this would have been a 4R trade. And technically, if I would have entered later on like a proper break and retest, then traded with more size and conviction, this would have been even better. But this is just obviously just future talk for a future Roman that hopefully does this stuff. But yeah, this was the YM trade that I took. And then obviously on NQ, pretty much a very similar thing happened. So on NQ, when was it? 333. So yeah, I took a trade pretty early. Well, let's just jump into the levels I had picked out for this one as well. So obviously same thing about NVIDIA. NVIDIA also created this new day opening gap on NQ. So there was a gap in the market here from the close from yesterday and then today. And then pretty much we had the same. So yesterday, previous day high was aligning with previous the Germany previous week high. So that was the touch point here. And then I think it was like over here. It wasn't like perfectly aligning, but whatever. The level was pretty strong. And then to the downside, instead of looking at previous day low, yeah, exactly. So previous day low was here from the news that happened when Trump was speaking. I wasn't really interested in this level. This looked more for me like a level of chop where price is like moving. It didn't really look for like to me like one of the swing points. So I still considered previous week high more important. But the same thing with the daily immediate rebalance. So at that point, this was the daily candle we traded today. This was still an inside bar candle at this point. So when I see these, personally, just from observation, I feel like this happens a lot, that we get like an immediate rebalance when we didn't even take out the previous high or the previous low. So I mean, in some rare cases, we will have a fully inside bar candle like it happened here. But even that, oh no, sorry, that's not true. So maybe this one, right? So this was the previous day candle, and this candle was completely within, but still huge wick, huge body. And it's very rare that we have one that is just like completely on the inside. So also expecting an immediate daily, immediate rebalance on the daily. Maybe also, I think I had a 4-hour fill that you can see here. So this was the move yesterday that maybe wanted to be rebalanced, and that was pretty much what I was looking for. And it was the same thing that I got out of the trade too early because I just hadn't had like the mental fortitude to stay in the trade for a bit longer. Let's jump immediately to the 1 minute because obviously this trade happened really fast. Since we didn't really trade into the previous week or previous day high and we had this gap, this looked like a pretty protected spot for me to go short pretty fast. So when the first candle opened and the market just tanked, I was like, I want to look for an immediate entry on the continuation to the downside. So this candle, the third candle, just barely didn't like come across the low of this wick. So I entered on the next one and I trade a 40-point stop loss when I trade for 3 minis on NQ. So this was not the most ideal spot for a stop loss placement because technically it would have been better at least above the high of this candle, but this would have been another additional, I don't know, like 8 points. And I think it just starts adding up if you like over risk all the time. It's better, for me at least, it's better to stay to the 250 at max for one trade. So this is where I got taken in. And then I technically had first take profit, what was for me the previous week high area. So this is a take profit zone. I feel for me psychologically, at least, it's easier to draw these boxes and trade from box to box than what I used to do back in the day, like a couple of weeks and months ago, where I just like just one singular line, because then you get so focused on being like, okay, price needs to hit this teeny tiny line on my chart. As whereas if you do like a box, I mean, it's just all psychology. It doesn't really change anything on the market from price action. But if you have like a box like this, and then I know, okay, this is a zone where I can take profit. I still use these lines for the immediate rebalances because this needs to be precise. But yeah, this was definitely the first zone where I was expecting to take profit. And depending on how price action would have been here, I would have been looking for 4-hour fill or daily immediate rebalance. But as I said, I did not do this because I felt price was very choppy. So what I like to enjoy usually more is what probably most people enjoy. It's like the classic staircase. You make like lower lows, lower highs, price is very much trending, you know, this goes quick and fast. But at this point, I was already in this trade for, I don't know, like 14 minutes. And I have yet, I think it was like a 1-to-1 trade. Yeah. 1 trade, and price was not really going anywhere. Then it started to finally like bleed out a little bit. And this is where I then took profit at the psychological level of 200. So it was 25,200. But to be honest, there was no reason really why price should have stopped here. Like if we're honest, new day opening gap was respected, previous week high was respected. Obviously, this is a crazy huge engulfing candle. We already had like the next target here. It was still not that far away, so it would have been fine to hold the trade at least into this. I mean, if I wouldn't have gone for the daily immediate rebalance, but it is what it is. Pretty much soon after I closed the trade, yeah, I think we had one pullback, and then we finally had some real momentum kick in. Yeah, you can see suddenly within, let's say, like 6 minutes, we lost another 90 points, which at this point is another 2R. And then we pretty much just had the classic staircase that I was talking about. Then we had this crazy huge candle at 412, which would have just smashed take profit in the long run. So the same on YM. If I just went for the daily immediate rebalance, which is what I was looking for, this would have been a 5-hour trade. With the 4-hour on YM, this would have been a 9-hour day, which is absolutely insane, which I talked about on the previous video journal, where I said I think it's better to hold these trades longer and trade on the trending days, and then potentially take a trade on the choppy ones, just to make some real nice profits. But otherwise, these were the 2 trades that I took today. So obviously this one didn't ran here. I think it ran somewhere there. But still overall really happy with how I read the market, how I managed to trade. I didn't touch my stop loss at all during this. I was very confident in this. And I was like, let's just let the trade happen. And yeah, that was the trade for the day. If you have any questions on how I draw levels and why I took this, just leave it in the comments and I'll be happy to ask. Otherwise, I see you tomorrow.